Hi guys, great to have you here with us. As you know, I'm Dinesh De Silva. This is about the instant tax write-off everybody's asking us about. It's a great initiative from the government and let's start using it. It's designed for small business and there are lots of questions on the instant tax write-off, and I'm here at Grant Thornton, one of the world's largest accounting firms. These guys have all the expertise, so let's ask them. With me here is Raj Deepan. Raj is a partner at Grant Thornton, and we have Mia Nee, who is a senior manager at Grant Thornton. Let's give them a big welcome, guys. Well done. I'm the only one clapping here. Raj, great to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here, Dinesh.
Mia, great to have you here. So let's get this started. Now, let's hear about Grant Thornton. Would you mind telling us a bit about Grant Thornton, Raj?
Yes, sure, Dinesh. So Grant Thornton is a global accounting firm. We are in 130 countries and about 50,000 people globally.
Wow.
In Australia, we are in all the states, about 1,400 people. And we focus on providing, mid-sized businesses with advisory services to help them grow and scale their business.
Fantastic, fantastic. And thank you for joining us. Thank you really making this time with us. Now, Mia, would you mind telling us what type of businesses are eligible for this grant?
Sure. To be eligible for this grant, generally you need to be a small business with aggregated turnover of less than 10 million. This applies for the period from 1 July 2016 all the way to 30 June 2020. However, the good news is that as a part of the recent budget measure, the government has extended this eligibility to some of the medium-sized business with a turnover of less than 50 million. And this applies from the budget night, which is 2nd of April 2019, all the way to 30 June 2020.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's been increased to 50 million as of April.
That's correct.
Wonderful.
And I think that just to come in there, I think the reason behind that is the Australian government sees mid-sized business or small to mid-sized business as the growth engine of the Australian economy, and they're encouraging business obviously to invest to grow the economy. So I think it's a great initiative by the government to actually extend it from 10 million to 50 million.
Fantastic. And all these investments are really targeted at growing the economy and growing jobs.
Absolutely. And I think that's the strategy, because obviously Australia does require tax reform in the long term, but as part of that strategy we need to broaden our tax base, and that strategy is to grow the economy, which in turn can help bring tax rates down in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raj. If I may ask you, what types of assets are eligible for this?
To be eligible, generally it needs to be a tangible depreciating asset. For example, a car that's used for business, or a printer, a laptop, etc. However, IPs, for example, patents or registered design and the licenses for those are also eligible. In addition, the in-house software are also eligible for the write-off.
Fantastic. So if somebody buys some software or invest in building their web platform or website, and those are eligible assets.
That's correct, as long as the keyword is in-house, as long as it's for their private, for their business use, then yeah, you will be eligible.
Fantastic. And that's a really good point. So as long as these assets are bought to be used for their business as opposed to for their private use or for sale, they are eligible.
That's correct.
Fantastic.
It can't be a stock, it can't be a trading stock.
Yes.
So yes, generally I'd say most of those tangible assets are eligible.
Thank you, Mia. Another question that is commonly asked, and these are the questions that you guys have sent to us, is that how much, if I'm earning a profit of 30,000 or if I'm earning a profit of 50,000, how does it work? So say if a business has a profit of $50,000 this financial year, how does it work?
So yeah, just to answer that, the tax rate for that business would be 27.5%. So they would only pay about a third of that profit in tax. It's about 15K tax. By claiming the instant asset write-off, you're saving effectively, let's say it's $20,000 is what you spent. then on that you're saving your 30% tax or 27.5% tax, which reduces your tax liability by about 6K.
Right.
So it effectively gives you immediate tax saving, which the idea is that then you can utilize that money to deploy in other parts of your business.
Fantastic. So if I buy an asset for say 25,000 and my profit is 50,000, so my tax liability goes down to 25,000?
So it depends on whether you're entitled to $20,000 or the $30,000 concession, assuming it's a 20,000.
Yeah.
So you would say your profit is 50,000, you get a write-off of 20,000. So your revised profit is 50,000 minus 20,000, which is 30,000.
Okay.
And you pay tax on the 30,000.
All right. So just to keep it simple,
Yeah.
Raj, say from now on, so assume today is the 15th of April,
Yeah.
and I buy, or any business buys an asset for 25,000, but their profit for that financial year is 50,000.
Yes.
So their tax liability becomes, or taxable income is
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, I think maybe we can answer that, right? In terms of when you buy an asset for 25,000, if the limit's 20,000, then
If the asset is purchased today and
Yes.
installed ready for use,
Yes.
then I believe the 30,000 limit will apply.
will apply. Okay.
Because we've passed
It's been passed, yes.
the budget now. And then if that's the case, then your taxable profit will be reduced to 25,000. And essentially, you reduce your tax bill by the applicable tax rate of 27.5 on the 25,000. If that,
Which works out about $8,000, I think.
Right.
So it's a tax saving about $8,000.
There's a tax saving of 8,000.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. And this is why a lot of these questions are, right? Because of the way that there have been multiple announcements by the government, correct?
That's
And the recent announcement was made into law, if I'm not wrong. Was it on the 6th of April?
Yes, it received the royal assent on 6th of April. Therefore, it is legislated.
So fantastic news, guys. So the $30,000 tax instant tax write-off is available as of the 6th of April. So if you have a profit of 50,000, and you buy something for say 25,000, then your tax liability is the balance 25,000, and then whatever tax is calculated, as Raj said, about 8,000 would be your
Tax saving.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's fantastic news, guys. And my other question is, what happens if somebody buys an asset that has 50% business use and 50% personal use?
That's a very good question. Only the business portion is eligible for the instant asset write-off. So, for example, if the asset purchased was, let's say, 20,000, only 10,000 is eligible for the write-off because the other 50% is used privately. One thing very important we would like to point out is the total cost of the asset needs to be under the threshold. So for example, if on 1 June 2019 you've purchased an asset for, let's say, 40,000 and used it 50% for business, then because even though the business portion is only 20,000, technically it's under the threshold.
Yes.
Because the entirety of the cost of the asset is over the 30,000 threshold, unfortunately it won't be eligible.
It won't be eligible.
Yes.
All right. So thank
So
you.
the critical number is a 30,000.
30,000.
Is a 30,000 for irrespective of business or private use.
Yeah.
To qualify, you've got to be under the 30,000.
So that asset that you purchase has to be under 30,000.
That's correct.
So now that brings me to the next question, and these are the questions you guys have asked us. If I buy an asset for 30,000, does that need to be inclusive of GST or can it be exclusive of GST? Mia, what are your thoughts on that?
It depends. For most business, I think they will be registered for GST. So if you are registered for GST, you would have already claimed the GST paid on the asset in the business activity statement for the relevant period. So in that case, the threshold is actually GST exclusive.
Fantastic.
However, in some limited situation where you're not registered for GST because you're under the threshold, then the 20,000 or 25,000 instant asset write-off threshold will be GST inclusive.
Okay, fabulous. So for those businesses who are not paying GST or not registered for GST, must consider that the GST component is included in that purchase of the asset. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, that's correct.
So just to clarify, Dinesh, right? So you were saying the company is registered for GST.
No, if a company is not registered,
it's not registered, it needs to be included. That's correct. That's
so
correct.
If a business is not registered for GST,
yeah,
and if you buy an asset, then we got to make sure that asset inclusive of GST is under the threshold.
That's correct. That's
yes.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. And generally, we find most businesses are registered. Small businesses are registered for GST. Mm-hmm. The situations where you may not be registered for GST is if you're in health services or you're in primary food. You know, you sell fruit and vegetables. Mm-hmm. So there are limited exemptions where a small business will not be registered for GST. Mm-hmm. In most cases, we expect it to be registered for GST. In which case your threshold is your 30,000 plus your GST. So the total purchase price could be 33,000, and so after GST your purchase is around 30,000, and you would qualify.
Fantastic, fantastic. What happens if a company that is making a loss? So this financial year, a business is making a loss of say $50,000, and they buy an asset for 30,000. What happens then?
So instant asset write-off actually increases the losses. Sorry, I have to get this out.
That's okay.
It increases the losses, and those losses can be used to carry forward indefinitely to offset against future taxable income, provided certain company loss measurements are met. I would like to point out that it's an instant asset write-off. It's not a straight-up tax refund. Mm-hmm. So if you are making a loss, that does add to the loss pool in a way, but there won't be cash refund.
There won't be a cash refund.
Yes.
That's a really good point. A lot of people are confusing the instant asset write-off as a rebate. This is not a rebate, is it?
Yeah, that's right. It's not a rebate. It reduces your tax liability. So it's not a refundable offset or a refundable rebate. So if you have a tax liability, it will reduce your liability. If you have a tax loss, in which case you don't have a tax liability, you're just carrying forward those losses to be claimed in the next year.
Yeah. And for those businesses that are making a loss, and you buy an asset for 25,000, as long as you have the cash flow to do that, is there an advantage in increasing your loss, because in future years you can write that off from your profits?
So a couple of things to look at there, right? One is obviously, you get your GST back, mm-hmm. right? So GST you claim back straight away, right? And in terms of the loss, especially if you're expected, your forecast indicate you're going to make a profit next year, then it does make sense. Mm-hmm. Because the alternative to not claiming an instant asset write-off is to claim depreciation over a number of years.
Yes.
And it can be over 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So to get the same benefit, it's going to take 4 years.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're forecast to make a profit, let's say in the 2020 year, mm-hmm. the following year, mm-hmm. it makes sense to incur the loss before June this year, and then offset that loss against your profit for the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raj. These are really key questions people have, and you guys have these answers at the tip of your tongue. But a lot of people stress about these issues, and I really appreciate you making the time to tell us. Would you mind if I ask you a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Mia, would you mind telling us, is this instant asset write-off available only for one asset each year?
No, it actually applies to multiple assets. In fact, as many assets as a business can buy. So as long as each individual asset costs less than the threshold, the business can continue to use the instant asset write-off.
Yeah, so let me just elaborate on that, right? So let's say you go and buy some computers, assuming expensive computers, and the bill's $50,000, right? And you get a bill from Dell for some fancy computers. You actually look at the bill, it's got three servers in there, each of them costing less than the 30,000, right? Or each of them costing under the limit. And in which case you're able to claim the instant asset write-off on each of them. You don't look at the total bill, mm-hmm. you look at the components in the bill, and as long as they're discrete assets, mm-hmm. then you can clearly apply to each discrete asset.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. That's a really valuable point that a lot of businesses have asked us. The other question that is constantly asked is, do these assets have to be brand new?
No, it can be second-hand as long as they are used for business and they're under the threshold.
Okay, thank you. Now, the most confusing thing about this instant asset write-off is there have been multiple announcements by the government. I believe there have been 3. So I'm going to ask Mia to explain how that works. Now listen carefully, this is important. Don't get too nervous.
Sure. So the original instant asset write-off threshold was 20,000, and it applied from 1 July 2016 to 30 June 2019. However, back in January this year, the Morrison government announced they are going to increase the threshold to 25,000 and extend the instant asset write-off to 30 June 2020. And then once again, on budget night, the Morrison government has again increased the write-off threshold to 30,000, and with the extended application date till 30 June 2020. In addition, they have expanded the eligible criteria to make the medium-sized business to be eligible for that as well. So basically in 2019 financial year, we're dealing with 3 different thresholds. 1 July 2018 to 28th of January 2019, the threshold is 20,000. And from 29th of Jan to the budget night, which is 2nd of April,
yeah,
the threshold is 25,000. And from 2nd of April to 30 June 2020, as it stands, it's going to be 30,000.
So any asset purchased now, between now, Dinesh, and the end of June, you're basically in the 30,000 category.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, that was a really difficult question to answer because of the complexity of it. Mia, thanks for being such an expert and articulating that so easily. And I think, Raj, you really mentioned the essence of it.
Yes.
Right? Anybody buying an asset from the 2nd of April onwards is eligible for 30,000 in this financial year, and in the next financial year, it's another 30,000 per asset, as we discovered from the last question. Again, guys, it's been fabulous. Mia, getting to meet you, and Raja, I have met you before. You're an absolute rock star.
Always a pleasure, Dinesh, to catch up with you.
You know, your generosity is amazing. Your humility is even more unbelievable.
Thank you. Thank you,
It's
Dinesh.
been a delight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I'm Dinesh De Silva signing off.